HQ in Nashville, Tennessee, to wherever you're cheering on your Tennessee Titans. The So Bros Network presents the Unofficial Titans Podcast.
Welcome back for another episode of the Unofficial Titans Podcast right here on So Bros Network. Mind's right, ass is tight. As we tackle this week's episode for you, we are going to be recapping the 2024 Tennessee Titans draft haul. Got some dogs this year. And, of course, how rude of me. I am Big Natural Stoney Keeley, your host for the Unofficial Titans Podcast, the EIC at SoBrosNetwork.com, the third wheel on football and other F words, and NFL draft analyst for Stacking the Inbox, all over the internet streets these days. You can follow me on Twitter at Stoney Keeley. Collectively, I'm at SoBros Network on all major social media platforms. And here to give his thoughts on the 2024 Tennessee Titans draft class is my co-host on the Unofficial Titans Podcast. He is Cinderella Man, One Take O, coming to us from the Dad Zone, outspoken Owen Reed. Owen, TGIF, man, how you doing on this fine Friday?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Stoney. It's Friday. The weekend's almost here. Kendrick Lamar dropped a second diss on Drake. It's a great Friday. How are you doing?
Man, I'm okay. I'm hanging in there. I'm kind of resting, recouping a little bit. I can't keep up with all the diss tracks. I know it's gonna make me sound like a boomer, but I don't know why everybody's mad at each other and expressing anger through the art of the song is just, I don't know. It's a little off to me, man. I'm like, should these guys just fist fight? I don't understand how any of this stuff works. Back in my day, you'd politely ask someone if they wanted to step outside into the parking lot at the Thirsty Turtle out in Lebanon, Tennessee, and you'd settle your differences out there. But I don't know. I don't get it.
There's a lot of avenues to express anger, and violence is one of them. But you can also rap about somebody if you feel like it. Yeah. Just find the avenue that works for you.
Yeah. Whatever gets you to a healthier space. That's what we recommend here. Now I'm like rested. The last 3 weeks leading up to the draft were they were pretty rough, man. By the time the draft actually got here, I was feeling pretty bad, like waking up in the morning and having like bags under my eyes. I was eating a bunch of fast food, just trying to like do whatever was the quickest way I could get back to watching tape as we're trying to wrap up our draft guide. I think I ended up doing something like 40 to 50 of the 275 prospects in the last, well, actually I got to 300 prospects. But I did like 40 to 50 of those in the last 3 weeks, and it was crazy, man. Like I was having headaches, I was having trouble sleeping, and I was very thankful to get through the home stretch and doing a 7-hour broadcast on Saturday with Zach and Easton and JT. While it was a ton of fun, we got that thing over with, and I just sat there Saturday night just kind of like staring out the window. Just like, oh man, it's over. We did it. And this week I've watched a couple of new movies that I've never seen before. I finally got around to watching Roadhouse. I thought it was fantastic. I watched Drive-Away Dolls, thought it was not so fantastic. I've started working on a new poem. I've got an outline together for a new short story. It feels like a whole new world for me, but we're not done. We're not done with the draft coverage yet. Also, I should say, I guess people are saying this is a complete sicko move, but I did go yesterday to get my notebook to start working on the 2025 draft class. So I've caught a little bit. People tell me I have a problem. I need to seek help. I'm not even doing this for a team. I'm just doing it for draft coverage. But that's been my week, man, and I'm feeling pretty rested and ready to go. Like there's a brand new me. I've even lost a couple of pounds this week from trying to get back on the wagon. So we're doing good. We're doing good here today. Sounds like we're both in a pretty good space to tackle this episode. So let's dig right into it, Owen. Let's start with the J.C. Latham pick, first round, 7th overall. I'm curious. I'm really excited to get your take on the draft because I know you're not down in the mud on Twitter with everybody fighting with each other. So I just kind of want to know your initial reaction when his name was called, and have you changed at all since your feelings? Have your feelings changed at all since the initial selection?
Yeah, so I actually went to Nissan Stadium for the Titans draft party.
Oh, sick!
Which is always fun. Cool environment, a lot of vendors. You get to check out the locker room. They bring former players, current players. It's always fun. It's my favorite thing to do with the Titans every year.
Nice.
So when the first round started, everybody kind of sat down and took their seats, and you could kind of feel, the air gets sucked out of the stadium when the Chargers announced Joe Alt, because I know a lot of Titans fans were really set on it.
Yeah.
And, you just kind of saw that desperation amongst people as we were like, okay, well, maybe we have a chance with Neighbors, and he gets called. Maybe we have a chance with, Dunze, and he gets called. Or I'm sorry, was that right?
The order went Alt and then Neighbors, and then the Titans were on the clock. But I was in the camp that, like, when he was there, I was like, yeah, I think I would take a Dunze in this spot. But they ended up going with a guy
That's
that
right.
They said was Bill Callahan's favorite player in the entire draft.
And, you can't really argue with that. He's an offensive lineman guru.
Yeah.
A hell of a coach. But, you can't help but have concerns when he's going from the right to the left.
So what was
the hardest move to make?
So what was the mood like in Nissan Stadium whenever his name was announced? Was it just kind of disappointment? Were people kind of let down, or were there people there that were actually high on the pick from the jump?
Yeah, there was not a lot of excitement in Nissan Stadium. It kind of felt like everybody kind of stood up and gathered their things, and it felt like walking out after a loss, really. Not that it's a bad pick, but it wasn't a pick that was really on anybody's radar, I would guess, as far as the fan base goes. And it wasn't really a sexy pick either. So, yeah, it definitely was taken very rough.
Man, it's crazy because we were at the 440 Sports draft party on Thursday night, and the mood was kind of similar. Like, the pick was announced, and there was not really a whole lot of reaction to it. It almost kind of felt like it was the same sort of thing. People were kind of disappointed in it. Not the offensive lineman I would have selected. I would have gone Olu Fashanu in that spot, but I wanted Rome Odunze. He was my favorite player in the entire draft. And I get the vision behind the pick. I mean, it is the biggest area of need. And props to Rand Carthon for getting into the press conference and just right away saying he's going to be the left tackle. I mean, they didn't really leave it up for debate or leave any mystery to it. It was from the jump, no, our intention is to move him to the left side. He's going to be our left tackle. I was surprised to see that it seemed like the reaction on Thursday night was one very much of disappointment. But I felt like once people actually went back and started watching J.C. Latham tape and kind of catching up on some of the stories, he did a press conference where I think he comes across as a very fiery, well put together young man. Like I feel like he's going to be a tone setter for this offensive line. And I think as those nuggets came out, people started to get on board with the pick a little bit more. Was that the case for you, or are you still kind of a little hesitant about this one?
I guess I got to put in both camps on that. I would say initially it was disappointment because I was like, why the hell are we going right tackle? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. especially that high up. But like you said, as more of the videos came up of highlight reels, and he's got a 12-inch hand, and this guy's massive, and Bill Callahan was bigger on him. I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel a little better about this.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think it was Teron Davenport came out and said, like, I wish, because we did the media mock for Jim Wyatt, and I don't remember who he predicted, but I think I'm probably butchering this entire story, but like he said, I wish I had paid a little more attention to the signs that were there, because they were there all along. There are people in this market that I don't know if anybody has said it out loud, but there are people in this market that think they might have taken J.C. Latham over Joe Alt if Joe Alt was available. That's how high they were on him. They were sniffing around throughout the process. They had a really good meeting with him, and apparently, they hashed out all of the transition stuff, right tackle to left tackle. J.C. Latham played left tackle in high school. The only reason he played right tackle at Alabama is because Nick Saban felt like they couldn't move Caden Proctor. They needed him on the left side, and they needed to get their best five out there, so J.C. switched to the right side. But apparently he was supposed to switch back to the left tackle spot for his for the 2023 season, but Nick Saban basically said, no, we can't put Proctor on the right side, so we need you to hold that down. And he was willing to do that for the betterment of the team, and I think that's another thing that kind of speaks volumes about the guy. I really liked his tape. I have very few nitpicks with his game. I think there are some instances where his footwork kind of gets away from him a little bit. I think there are instances with the depth of his pass sets, or maybe he's a little off the mark. It's not a consistent thing. It's every once in a while he's a little off the mark and maybe sets too deep and gives up the inside, or maybe doesn't set deep enough and ends up chasing guys around the edge. But I think this is a really good pick. I think it's a healthy pick when you're rebuilding your franchise, and I think that it is going to have an exponential impact on the offense. If you can just get somewhere in between what they were last year and an elite unit, I think it changes the entire complexion of the season. So I don't really have a gripe about it. And the more I started drinking on Thursday night, the more I started thinking about it. Like, you know what? If you can take the power and the dominance that he showed at right tackle, if you think that you can harness that and spit it out at the left tackle spot, then you've got a dog, and you've got a guy that's going to be your left tackle for the next decade. I think that's an element of the game that Latham did have in spades, the power, the aggressiveness. I think that's something that is innate within somebody that you can't necessarily coach out of somebody, and I don't know that Olu Fashanu had that. And if that's the case, and if you think you can just seamlessly move him from the other side, go get your guy. I've got no qualms with it. But what do you think about the impact that potentially shoring up the left tackle spot would have on this offense as a whole, Owen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last left tackle that we got was Lawan, and you saw how not only was he like the guy at that position, but it also kind of led to a leadership position.
Yeah,
that really set the tone for what that line was going to be, and set them up for success later on. So I think it's very big, and if that is your guy and you found that, that fixes a major problem in your game.
So let's talk about the second round pick, because this is one that has been, oh man, it has been a street fight on social media this week. People are talking about Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle out of Texas, going 38th overall in the second round. Me personally, I'm a fan of the pick. I really like Tavondre Sweat. He was 36 overall on my big board, so not a reach at all in my opinion. But man, there are a lot of people that are questioning the decision to go with a defensive lineman in the second round. What do you think of Tavondre Sweat, Owen?
I'm with you. I really like the pick.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about him. I know that there were character concerns as far as the DUI went and other things.
Yeah.
And also the weight, has been called into question that he's just too big right now. But I think all those things are things that can be worked with, and I don't think they went unseen by the Titans. I think that they saw the potential and said, hey, what we saw on tape beats out this other stuff that we think we could work with. So I'm a fan of it. When it came to the defensive line, it was, Jeffrey Simmons and a lot of names that we just didn't recognize. So I think it's another one that definitely addressed a big need, and I like it.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Simmons' response to the pick is pretty telling, if you ask me. I don't know if you saw this, but he went on Twitter after the selection and basically thanked Rand Carthon, or I don't remember if he called Rand Carthon and thanked him, but he tweeted out something along the lines of, finally got another dog on the defensive line. And, I'm kind of reading that like, whoo, buddy. Tough seeing Jeff Simmons, what he was going through last year with that constant rotation of guys, Tier Tart not really being a reliable, consistent presence next to him, to feel like you've got a guy that, to me, what I like about T'Vondre Sweat the most is, yes, he's big, yes, he's a gap eater, yes, he's a run stuffer, but I think he's got some really quick hands that he can use to generate power and pass rush from the interior, which to me is something that we haven't really seen with this Titans defensive line in a long time, right? And Jarrell Casey was doing it on his own for a number of years. They never got him any help. It looked like we were going down that path with Jeffrey Simmons for a little bit, but they add T'Vondre Sweat, and now you've got two guys that are pretty mean, nasty dudes. Sweat more of the big space eater. I love the way he plays the run game. He's just so big and so strong. He plays with such good foot drive that he's really hard to contain. But then you pair in the fact that he can throw a long arm at somebody. He can throw speed to power at somebody. He's effective with his hands, a cross swipe, a swim move. He's got these tools. Like this is going to be a formidable unit. And like I talked about with the offensive line, the exponential impact it has on the rest of the defense. If you improve the defensive front, it makes it easier for your linebackers to clean up against the run. It makes it easier for your edge rushers to get home to the quarterback because they're likely going to be facing more one-on-ones. If teams have to choose, like, are you double-teaming Sweat? Are you double-teaming Simmons? Are you double-teaming both of them? And if that's the case, somebody's going to be open. It really, to me, it's not the sexy edge rusher. It's not, the Darius Robinson, the Chop Robinson, any of those guys that are just going to be lining up out wide and pinning their ears back and rushing the quarterback. But this is a move that, to me, does signal, hey, we are going to shore up the trenches. We're going to help our offensive line, we're going to help our defensive line, and we're going to build out from that. So I was ecstatic about the pick. It sounds like you were pretty high on it too. What about the rest of this class? Are there any of the other picks that really stood out to you that you're particularly stoked about?
A lot of people are saying our third pick, linebacker, correct?
Cedric Gray, North Carolina, yeah.
A lot of people are calling that a sleeper pick. That could be a big pickup in a day one starter.
Yeah, I think he is. I think he's going to be the green dot linebacker, and I admire Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan for coming out and saying J.C. Latham's going to be a left tackle, and I kind of feel like they should do the same with just name Cedric Gray the starter. He's got the range, he's got the athleticism, he plays hard, like he fits what this team is looking for in their defensive players. Like, don't waste time trying to sort it out this summer. Just get him out there running, get reps with the ones right off the bat. This dude could be a real steal for them. I was going to say Jarvis Brownlee Jr., the cornerback out of Louisville.
Absolutely.
He lands in a really good spot, in my opinion, because the expectations are not going to be for him to be an impact player right away, but he is another guy that is in the mold of what Denard Wilson looks for in a defensive back. And I think it's a perfect spot. He's got a little versatility. He could play inside. He could play outside. I think he's going to be good outside. I think he's a good contingency plan for life after L'Jarius Sneed, life after Chidobe Awuzie, or if either of those guys go down with an injury. I think if something happens to Roger McCreary, he could move inside to the slot and play well. And I've even heard some analysts this week say he might be a potential candidate to move over to safety as well, which is another area that this team still needs help with. Versatility, tenacious player that has some skill. I know he's not the most athletic guy. That's, in my opinion, probably the likeliest reason for him sliding to the 5th round. There's not a lot of straight line speed with him. He's not a burner. He's not the twitchiest guy. But, man, he is a really smart player that can undercut a route, really superb route recognition, and he just doesn't let you get off the line of scrimmage, which is it's awesome to see the vision come together for this regime, because you can see a little bit of L'Jarius Sneed in Jarvis Brownlee Jr. And if they've got a guy that's anywhere remotely close to that, this is going to be a steal. So I really, really liked the first 4 picks of the draft. The final 3, not so much. Jaquan Jackson, not the wide receiver I would have selected, but I get the vision. James Williams is another guy that he's kind of a tweener. I think he's too light to play I thought he was like too light to play linebacker, but not twitchy and rangy enough to play safety. I thought he was kind of a tweener. It sounds like they turned in the card at linebacker, so they're going to add him to that room. And if they can, bulk him up a little bit and teach him a little bit of better play recognition, diagnosis ability, and kind of limit the space, right? If you're a linebacker, you don't have as much green grass to cover as you do if you're a safety. So maybe that helps the game, and the vision is like he's going to help out on special teams now and maybe one day step into the linebacker rotation. And then Jalen Harrell, pretty athletic, pretty fun, little developmental edge rush prospect. I thought personally, Owen, they checked just about every box that they needed to check. I had been saying for a while, like, there's a really good crop of undrafted running backs. They got 2 of them in Washington's Dylan Johnson and Tennessee's Jabari Small. I think that really beefs up the running back room. No issues there. The tight end, still a bit of a question mark, but I think the way the board fell, I have no issues with them not drafting one. They added a couple of tight ends in undrafted free agency, really athletic kid from Temple, and then they got one of these Iowa tight ends that you figure, follows in the footsteps of the other guys. He's going to be pretty good. Iowa seems to crank out good tight ends. So I really thought that they checked a lot of the boxes, but looking at the class as a whole, Owen, what do you think about their strategy to attack certain positions? Do you think that they did about as good of a job as they could of addressing need with guys that fit the style they want?
Yeah, I think overall, if you look back at it, it looks like they had a clear vision for what they wanted and executed it. There's going to be question marks on it, and only time will tell. But just like you said, with what they had, I think they worked well with it.
I'm with it, man. I was surprised by the final 3 picks because they weren't guys that we really knew they were sniffing around other than Jaquan Jackson, because we know, I think it was Tyke Tolbert, I think it was the receivers coach, was actually at Tulane's pro day. So they got a good look at the kid. But I wasn't aware that they were sniffing around James Williams. I wasn't aware they were sniffing around Jalen Harrell. You factor in the Jarvis Brownlee athletic testing, Cedric Gray athletic testing, Tavondre Sweat, and then J.C. Latham just foregoing the athletic testing altogether, which apparently was because of an injury, by the way. I don't know if that's been cleared up or not, but that was reported last week, was that he didn't do the athletic testing because of an risk of aggravating an injury. But to me, I was kind of surprised that Jalen Harrell was the only guy that really tested well athletically, from like the explosive drills or the explosiveness drills, the agility drills, the speed drills, stuff like that. And it kind of made me look at this draft class through a different lens. Like, okay, well, they've clearly got access to analytics that we don't have. The simplistic metrics that we use to test athleticism, usually pretty fair indicators of success, but didn't line up with what the Titans did, right? The information that most of us average Joes have access to said this draft class is loaded with okay athletes, okay to maybe even poor athletes from a testing standpoint. But when you look at the characteristics of how these guys play, J.C. Latham's a dog. Tavondre Sweat's a dog. Cedric Gray's a dog. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. certainly a dog. James Williams is a dog. I got my questions about him as a prospect, but there's no denying that man will lower the boom on somebody in the open field. So I'm kind of looking at this thinking, okay, well maybe they obviously they do have access to information that we don't have, metrics that we have, like in-game GPS stuff to track speed and all sorts of analytics. There's a million different analytics firms out there that we know Chad Brinker and his staff are taking advantage of, that we quite frankly don't have the money to get access to because we're not an NFL franchise. So I keep saying, like, if Ran or Chad or Brian, anybody who's listening to this podcast, just at the SoBrosNetwork@gmail.com, slide me some account access over there so I can do some better scouting next year. But I'm going to land this plane, I promise. To look at this rebuild and say, okay, maybe the athleticism, the raw agility, explosiveness testing isn't the most important thing. Maybe the most important thing as we rebuild this entire roster is to get tone setters, guys that have decent enough tape that we think will be good fits in our locker room, but guys that play hard, play with aggression, they play a feisty brand of football. Like, this is sort of, to me, I'm kind of looking at it as this is the class that's going to come in and kind of provide the fire for this franchise moving forward. And if I put it in that context, it makes me warm up to the class overall a little bit more. But what do you think about that idea that this rookie class could be the future tone setters for the Titans?
No, I agree. I'm with you on that. I think, like you said, there's no denying the dog in the picks.
Yeah, and all of them, like, really.
Absolutely. I feel like there's solid tape to go behind each pick and what you went with and why you went with them. So, yeah, I'm with them that they have potential for longevity.
All right, let's get to some listener questions here. Okay, this one comes to us courtesy of Kablarnage. Based on how the Titans drafted wide receiver this year, it feels like T. Higgins is being targeted during next offseason if D-Hop isn't re-signed. Thoughts? I would say, Owen, that I kind of feel like DeAndre Hopkins is going to be in this team's plans moving forward. I mean, at this rate, at his age, I would be surprised if to do what he does. I mean, like I said, I've said before, unless he just completely falls off a cliff, I think he kind of likes it here. He seems to like it here anyway. And I think the Titans have the room to make it happen. I kind of feel like DeAndre Hopkins is going to be an extension candidate next offseason. So I don't have a gut feeling that he's going to be leaving anyway. And I kind of feel like if they were going to make T. Higgins happen, this would have been the offseason to do it. And I just don't know. I think this is going to answer a question we're gonna get to later, but I kind of feel like the Titans are putting themselves in a position to get a premium wide receiver in the draft next year, maybe a premium edge rusher in the draft next year. So I just don't see them shelling out big money for T. Higgins next offseason when signing Hopkins might be the safer route, and they just paid all that money to Calvin Ridley. And if things go according to plan, they're not going to have too many like franchise cornerstone piece type of needs in the draft next season. I don't really feel like T. Higgins is going to be a target for this team next offseason. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think another aspect that a lot of people have been talking about lately is that Tyler Boyd came in to visit. Was in Nashville yesterday, left without signing a deal, but doesn't mean it's a no.
Well, it was he visited with the Titans and the Chargers this week, but the Chargers signed DJ Chark, so it looks like he might not be going to L.A., and our guy Pretty Ricky on Twitter is saying that he expects Tyler Boyd to sign with the Titans. So that's interesting there if that comes to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I just don't know if T. Higgins is going to be the guy they're going to, go after. But an interesting thought all the same.
Daniel asks a really good question. Besides Levis, who are the most important Titans players this season, both for the future and the current season? I would start with J.C. Latham because, like I said, the offensive line was such a dire need. You're switching him from right to left. If this move pans out, I mean, this could, like, at that point now you're cooking with gas, right? Like, you've solved your biggest need. You can really get the passing offense going if Will Levis has more time to operate and guys aren't shooting gaps and crashing the line on every play and putting your left tackle on his ass. I think it kind of unlocks the rest of this offense. So if you've got that pick right, man, I really think it can do wonders for this team. What do you think looking at this roster? Who is the most important?
Yeah, I think Latham's a big one. I think Tajay Sharp will be big this season. He's kind of
Tajay Spears.
Sorry, yes, Spears. I always do that. So
I'm guilty of it
why
too.
Do you have two players that are just so close to each other in name? Sorry, Spears. I think it's big. It's a big year for him.
Sure.
We're kind of leaning on him after Henry's leaving, and I know they're kind of trying to move towards a more dynamic offense. But we need to know: is this going to be a big hole for us now, or are we going to kind of is he going to fit the new mold of what we want out of this offense?
Yeah, I would add on defense, I think I would look at the edge rushers. I think the secondary is suddenly, to me on paper, one of the best in the league. And obviously Jeffrey Simmons is Jeffrey Simmons. If Tavondre Sweat is even remotely what we think he's going to be, the front is going to be pretty strong, formidable. But man, I'm curious, like they waited a while to address the edge rusher. They didn't sign a free agent. It's Arden Key, who flashed at times as he's just a pure pass rusher. Like, that's what you bring him in to do, to get to the quarterback. But I don't think he offers a whole lot of versatility. Harold Landry is a hammer. We know that, but I'm just it seems like in this day and age, it takes three guys to form a rotation. And so I would say if Harold Landry and or Arden Key can get back to sacking the quarterback at a high level, I think that is the weak link on the defense right now, in my opinion, is the edge rush depth. Any thoughts on the defensive side when we're talking about this question, Owen?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a big year for our corners.
Yeah.
Just once again, we're moving into a new system. And we went for two big guys, two big names. I want to see if this is going to work and if that's the dynamic we're going to go with.
Fair enough. Rowdy GC asks, not a question, but please make me feel better about Chigakonkwo as tight end 1. Had a pretty rough 2023 campaign, and we did nothing to address the tight end spot outside of UDFAs. Would have liked to have seen us bring in another proven tight end due to the lack of actual NFL experience in-house. Rowdy, I'm cool with Chigakonkwo as tight end 1. I'm actually pretty cool with the top 2 tight ends. I was a big fan of Josh Wiley the season he was having before he got hurt. I think he could develop into a really nice overall jack-of-all-trades style of tight end. And then I think with Chigakonkwo, this coaching staff probably going to lean into his electricity a little bit more. You would think, like, he's a dynamic playmaker, great athlete in the open field. You use that. And I don't feel like the previous regime really did that to the fullest extent. And so that gives me hope that Chigakonkwo can take another step forward in his development this year. I also don't think I don't think I would call his 2023 quote pretty rough. I think it started off pretty slow, but there were times he started flashing like this guy's going to be something. This guy is going to get there at the next level. What's your overall optimism like for Chigakonkwo as the top tight end this season, Owen?
I'm with you too. I don't feel a whole lot of pressure on it. Yeah, he's not the star tight end that other teams have, but I think just the pieces that we've added, having Calvin Ridley there is going to help open things up for him. I think that having a more dynamic offense is going to help open things up for him. So I think there's optimism there. I don't feel a big pressure on tight end right now.
Tyler says, tinfoil hat question, do you think Rand trades Burks, potential overproduction, for an edge rusher who hasn't lived up to the hype? Basically, a change of scenery trade, maybe like Burks for Peyton Turner. I did like Peyton Turner coming out of college. I thought he would have been I thought he would be further along than he is right now, but I would have said the same thing for Treylon Burks as well. I don't think, man, from everybody seems to think that the Tyler Boyd news is bad news for Treylon Burks. But I think the Tyler Boyd news is the worst news for Kyle Phillips and Jaquan Jackson, myself. It's just my opinion. I can't give too much away. I will say this. Friday night's 440 Sports draft party, our special guest was Derek Mason. We got to sit there, talk to him a little bit, ask him some questions. Really, really wonderful, fantastic evening. And we talked about Treylon Burks. And again, like you had to be in the room, that conversation stays within those four walls, which is maybe I should sell next year's draft party a little bit there. So you never know what's going to happen. But I came away from the conversation with Derek Mason thinking, I don't know that they view him as strictly a slot receiver. That's been a popular topic of discussion, moving Treylon Burks back into the slot. I think they're going to move him around the formation a little bit. I don't think that he is going to be strictly a slot guy. And so it kind of made me think that there might be some faith in Treylon Burks to actually develop and take the next step and get better. So what we're hearing in the press conferences, of course, anything can change if the right offer is made. But I kind of feel like Burks is a guy that they're going to make a concerted effort to get involved a little bit more because he does still have potential. So I don't think that Treylon Burks is going to end up on the trading block. What's your feeling on Burks as we go into year 3 for him?
Yeah, I think just going back to the original question, I don't know that there's a big market for him. And I know that every time, Tennessee fans get unpopular with a player, our immediate thought is to trade them. And it's like, trade them for what? I don't know if there's anything that other teams see that they would want to take a risk on. But I'm also with you in the sense that I don't think it's time to give up on them yet. I think there's still potential productivity, and I think this could be a big year to prove it.
The general says, getting an early fantasy question in about Tyjae Spears. What's your best guess as to how he is used next year? Is it a true 50-50 split, both he and Pollard on the field at the same time a lot, or do you think it's the Pollard show and the usage splits are similar to last year? Man, I'm close to like all of the above. I would not be surprised if they like Pollard better and want to give him the lion's share of the workload. But my gut says it's going to be closer to 50-50, and it might even be a situation where it's like drive for drive, where like Spears gets one drive, then Pollard gets the next, then Spears, then Pollard, and they're alternating. I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them on the field at the same time. I think both of these guys are very similar in style, and I think that enables this team to kind of do whatever they want to do on offense, regardless of who's out there. I would say for fantasy purposes, if you can get your hands on both of them and kind of see how it plays out, I think that would be the move. I don't know that I'm starting either of these guys week 1 until I get a better sense of how Brian Callahan's going to deploy these guys. I really like Tyjae Spears. I think he's going to have a big season in 2024, but this is just from having faith in the talent and having scouted him at Tulane and watching his rookie year, the flashes that he showed. I think there's reason to believe that if he does get the opportunity, he's going to have a pretty monstrous 2024. The question is just, are they going to use him enough? How do they want to deploy these guys? And if he doesn't get the opportunity, what does his production ceiling then look like? And I don't think we're going to know until we're a few games into this season. Owen, what do you think about Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard as fantasy prospects?
Yeah, I feel the same way that you do. I think early on in the season, for sure, you're going to see a split unless there's just a clear-cut, number one guy that comes forward. As far as fantasy goes, I don't know if I'd touch either of them early on just because that role's so uncertain. I think it'll take a while in the season for that to develop.
Travis asks us, what do you need to see this year in order to know that Levis is the guy? Man, I'm in the camp where I'm kind of already sold that Levis is the guy. He's at least the guy that you want to build around for the next 4 years. Like the rookie contract, like this is a guy, I think you see the competitive traits, you see the fire within the guy. He's not afraid of the moment. He's comfortable out there. You just kind of need to get him to rein in some of the reckless rookie mistakes. And I think if we see that, with an offseason where he is the unquestioned starter, because we do have to remember last summer he was quarterback 3 going throughout training camp, but now he's the guy. And I think all you want to see for me from where I sit, I just want to see him not take a step back. If he doesn't take a step back, I'm good. Let's go. What do you think about Will Levis? What do you need to see from him in order to have that faith that he's the guy moving forward?
Yeah, I feel like he's the guy right now too. I think that, once again, this offense is kind of getting set up around him now. It's not, up in the air limbo like it was last offseason. And I think just to see him progress under an offense that's meant for him, that's designed with him as QB1, you just want to see, like you said, progress, no steps back.
Our boy Eldon showed back up again this week. Most likely free agent signed for the following positions and why. Also, if you think they will sign one for those positions. Safety, edge, offensive tackle, wide receiver, which he acknowledges may be a layup considering Tyler Boyd. We feel pretty confident that Tyler Boyd's going to be a Tennessee Titan at this point. And tight end, any other positions you think they will need looking for. So, Eldon, I kind of feel like at this point, we might get a couple of more free agent signings. I would not be surprised if they did make a push for a Justin Simmons or a Marcus May. We know the conversations have been ongoing with them. The prevailing theory right now is that the price tags are too high, and teams have just been waiting until after the draft to see if the price is going to come down or if they were able to snag a safety they like in the draft. Maybe they don't need one. They don't need to spend the money. That's the one position that I do feel like probably still needs to be a priority right now. Edge rusher, I think there are some interesting names out there. Carl Lawson, chief among them. I admit that I haven't kept up with Carl Lawson since he signed with the New York Jets, but the season he was entering free agency, he was one of the guys that I was pounding the table for the Titans to sign, and they didn't sign him, so he goes on to New York, but that name sticks out to me as well. As far as the tackle goes, man, I don't know, because I feel like they feel good about J.C. Latham. They traded for Leroy Watson. Maybe it was just insurance, but we're at a point in the offseason where looking at the available offensive tackles, I know we've had our fun talking about Andres Pete, but the free agent tackles that are left are kind of old retread guys that have some durability concerns, and I just don't know what the upside is there. Maybe Andres Pete. I think someone reported that they had been on the phone with him. We're kind of waiting to see how the draft goes, so maybe he's a guy that could come in and help fortify your right tackle competition this summer. But I think they're happy with J.C. Latham. Wide receiver, yeah, we talked about like Tyler Boyd, and there are probably like 5 other Tyler Boyds that are still out there right now. So hard to go wrong there. And then tight end, listen, I might be in the minority on this one. I'm okay if they pass on a veteran tight end. I think the best option that's still out there right now is Logan Thomas from Washington, but he's got some serious injury concerns. Mercedes Lewis is out there. I would be fine with either of those guys signing, but I'm pretty high on Chig and Josh Wiley. So I'm in the minority of, hey, let's let these undrafted guys duke it out in training camp, see if a third tight end emerges. And ultimately, we'll get to my overarching theme with this is that maybe they add a safety relatively soon, but I think the free agent spots left are guys that you kind of watch the waiver wire in July and August, and you see who's being cut from other teams that you might be able to add. And I kind of feel like we're going to save a few open spots for that. But free agency, Owen, any particular position that you think they should be hitting pretty hard right now?
I hate to keep echoing you, but I feel the same way. I think outside of safety, there's just not a lot of moves to make, honestly.
Eldon follows up with immediate needs you think will need to be addressed for 2025, just based off what they have covered in 2024. Yeah, this was the question I alluded to earlier. I think they've positioned themselves pretty nicely for 2025 to get a premium wide receiver in the draft and to get a premium edge rusher in the draft. Maybe free agency is in play for the edge rusher. I haven't looked at the class for next year, but I know next year's class is pretty loaded up on defense. And so I think they've done a great job this offseason so far of checking boxes. And now unless these picks, obviously the big caveat here, if these picks are just total bust, then you got to kind of, start from scratch there. But if they've hit on a few of these guys, they're going to start getting in position to take the premium luxury picks. Right? You might not necessarily need a wide receiver, but you're in a spot where maybe Hopkins does leave, maybe Calvin Ridley doesn't work out. None of these young guys end up emerging. So you go get the wide receiver, edge, maybe Arden Key and Harold Landry don't work out. It's another need for this team. You can go get a premium guy. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now. But what would you say to this one?
Yeah, from what's come out so far from 2 early projected draft classes, it does seem like a defensive-heavy one.
Yeah.
So it might be a good chance to go edge. It's probably one that we're not going to fill this year. So I could see that as the spot we go.
For sure. Eldon's last question, which of your favorite draft prospects went to a great situation for them, and which went to a place you think they may fail? So I've got 2 answers for the favorites. I really love Dominic Pooney going to San Francisco, a really versatile offensive lineman that might take a little bit of time to develop. I don't think he's going to be needed right away in San Francisco, but he's a guy that can pitch in at center. He can pitch in at guard. He might even be able to play tackle. It might be worth getting a look at him there. But this is a guy that, man, I don't think if you're Dominic Pooney, I don't think you could have landed in a better spot. I think he's a really good player, and I think he's going to be – I think we're going to look up in a couple of years' time and be like, man, this is a guy. This is a dude that's going to have some longevity in the NFL. I also really like my deep cut Travis Glover landing with Green Bay. Plays left tackle. I don't know what the prospects are of him moving to the right side, but I think having him and Jordan Morgan that they drafted in the first round – 2 really good prospects to have on the left side, and you can kind of let both of those guys decide, okay, who's going to be the guard, who's going to be the tackle of the future. But I like that spot for Travis Glover because I think he's a much better prospect than he was given credit for, and I think he's got a shot to win one of those 2 jobs. As for my least favorites, we're going to stay in Green Bay. I really loved safety Evan Williams out of Oregon, safety Katan Oladapo out of Oregon State. Both of those guys were on my hidden gems list in the draft guide. Both of them ended up on the Green Bay roster, along with Georgia safety Javon Bullard. So Green Bay drafted 3 safeties. So what I hate about that is that one of my guys that I really loved in this draft class is probably going to be the odd man out. And I don't know if maybe there has been some talk that maybe Oladapo, because of his frame, because of his size, maybe switching to linebacker. I wouldn't do that personally. I think he's good enough to play safety in the league. But I kind of feel like unless these two dudes somehow edge out Javon Bullard, who was a higher draft pick, I feel like one of these guys is going to be the odd man out. And I hate to see that because I liked both of their tape. Okay, final question. Final question comes to us from Canadian Titan. That's our buddy Ethan. Should picking your nose be frowned upon? It feels really great sometimes, and we all know that everyone does it. Is it time to be brave and start digging for gold in public? Owen, your thoughts?
Okay, so yeah, I agree with part of that. Everybody picks their nose, and it's just something that everybody does. Does that mean do it all the time in public? No. You know, be discreet about it. But, you know, if you do catch somebody picking their nose, don't give them the third degree. You know, maybe they had an itchy booger up there. I say let it go, but be discreet about it.
Yeah, maybe we don't like celebrate it, right? Maybe we still have some reservations about when and where we do it. But I will say, like, yes, there's nothing like that feeling when you're all clogged up and then you can just reach up there, and the relief that comes when you can alleviate the pressure and you can breathe again. There's nothing like it. But, you know, I don't know. I still think I'm personally a ways away from feeling comfortable just out there slinging boogers all over the place. But you know what? I get the sentiment. We can, anything that empowers people, I'm for it. Well, that's it, Owen. That is it. That is all we've got for this week's episode. Any parting shots before we get on out of here today?
No, man. I'm excited to sit through the summer and hear all the theories on how the season's going to go. I'd take that back. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm ready for football. But in the meantime, I mean, I guess I'll just watch some baseball and get ready for fall.
Well, man, we've got off-season content coming up again. It's another year of off-season content where we're going to dig into Titans history. We're going to talk about some of the more broader topics. Like it's a fun time of year for the Unofficial Titans podcast. So I'm looking forward to that. I gotta shoot you over the list of topics for this summer, and we could start prepping for that. But that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for tuning in. As a reminder, you can get my coverage of the Tennessee Titans and the NFL Draft at stackingtheinbox.com. $5 a month is a tremendous value. You get the draft guide if you want to read up on my reports on all of the Titans draft class. They're all included in this year's guide. I wasn't surprised like I was with Colton Dowell last year. I did it successfully, mission accomplished there. So you can check that out, stackingtheinbox.com. We've got merch, including our Roll the Dice, Play the Board t-shirts. Still got some Coach Better, Play Better shirts, but I think those are going to be out of production before long. But that's up, SoBroShop.com. And rate, review, subscribe to the Unofficial Titans podcast wherever you take in your shows. We're out there in these internet streets, baby. We ain't too hard to find. For outspoken Owen Reed, I am Big Natural Stoney Keeley. And until next time, you stay classy, Titans fans.